Hey there, welcome to the Mental Perk podcast. I'm Karla Hutcherson, licensed professional counselor.
And I'm Brandi Mock, entrepreneur, author, and community leader. And we're here to talk about
real people, real issues, and real talk.
Today on Mental Perk, we are joined by Tony Godwin, a 35-year enforcement veteran dedicated to protecting children. With decades of experience in the fight against online exploitation, and as a leader in the Northern Texas ICAC Task Force, Tony shares his insights on safeguarding kids in the digital age. Let's dive into this critical conversation. Welcome to the show.
Welcome, Tony. I love the name Godwin.
Oh, thank you.
I mean, it's a win-win, isn't it?
Godwins all the time. That's right. That's how everybody remembers it. They're like, I like that. Well, thank you for having me.
We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it soon, but I remember you as something else because of what someone told me about your story. But let's get into what your general background is. What got you into this field? What got you into child trafficking?
Well, in the long run, I was, just working as a cop. I was a patrol officer for about 12 years, working the late night shift, and I had been in the military prior, so I worked in investigations at that time. So I always knew I wanted to move into the investigations arena. I did not work kid-related crimes for the military, but I enjoyed it. So I knew, I was like, you know what, eventually I want to get into this. So I put in for it at my agency, and then, after my 12th year, I got lucky enough to get in there. And so the opening that was there was for youth crimes. And you didn't really have a choice. You just kind of went where they wanted you to go, and I was happy to have the investigation role. And then once I got into that role working kid cases, like you really start to kind of figure out, like, man, this is important. Like there's a lot of kids going through a lot of things, and what better person to put in prison? There's no sympathy for these people.
No.
Nor should there be. And at the end of the day, I just developed a passion for this. So I was a regular case-carrying detective for a little while, and then I took a little short. I always had an interest in ICAC, Internet Crimes Against Children. And so it's kind of a funny story, I'll tell you. I was going by the copier one day, and the guy that had the job before me, one of my mentors, he's at the copier, and he's like in a Hawaiian shirt, Bermuda shorts, and flip-flops. He's got a big beard. And I was struck. I was like, what is going on? Like, why are you here on vacation? Yeah. What are you doing? And he's like, I'm not on vacation. He's like, I'm at work.
He's undercover.
And I said, I was like, you get to dress like that? And he's like, yeah. And I said, you can grow a beard like that? And he's like, yeah. He goes, I look at horrible stuff all day. He goes, they don't really mess with me. And I was like, I want to dress like that. Yeah. And he goes, well, be careful what you ask for. That was his words of advice. But he was a great guy. I did a little 1-year stint in our robbery homicide unit, which I enjoyed immensely. But then he was getting long in the saddle. He was going to retire. And so I put in for that job, and I got it, thankfully. And I've been there for 19 years now doing nothing but ICAC. I'm kind of one of the old heads here in the Metroplex areas. How
do you compartmentalize that? How do you not take all that home with you, or do you take it home with you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, it changes your perspective 1,000%.
Yes.
The things that I have seen, I always say when I do public teaching for, education, awareness, that kind of stuff, you can't unring a bell that's been rung. Like you're seeing this, you're exposed to this stuff. It changes your perspective in so many ways. But I feel like I'm just sort of uniquely gifted to do the job that I do. I do compartmentalize it because I have a life outside of law enforcement.
Yes.
I have a lot of hobbies. I love to do woodworking and stuff like that and just building furniture. So it's kind of my outlet for that.
Yes.
But I'm really grounded in my faith. I'm really grounded with my family. I have a wife and 4 kids who all know everything that I do. So it's just a balance. Like it's the necessary evil.
You take solace in the fact that you're actually helping kids. I mean, getting them out of this terrible situation has to be somewhat rewarding in addition to what you see.
Yeah. Unfortunately, what this job does is fractures families.
Yeah.
Because when I find a perpetrator or I arrest a perpetrator who's got this propensity for a child, yes, I'm saving this kid, and yes, we're putting this child back into a restorative path to, whatever that looks like for them, and to navigate those waters, for the rest of their lives. This is not just they just don't turn away from it and then it's forgotten. This is a lifelong situation for them. And lots of times these perpetrators, the one aspect of this job that I don't like is when I have to go and talk to the family. And I have to then basically shatter their world, because this is not the person they know. The good majority of the time. There's very few instances where there's already knowledge of things that go on, but unfortunately, with the kind of hands-on abuse and the things that happen, especially with online that leads to hands-on, a lot of that close activity is already family-based, because it's probably someone within their own family. Like a very high percentage of offenders who are hands-on offenders, it's familial. So you're just devastating an entire family. Right?
Well, I looked at some statistics. 45% of trafficking victims, they know their trafficker.
Yeah.
And so 100%. It's easy, though. The question would be, is that why it becomes so easy for them to groom them? Because there's a trust there. They're a family member. What do you see when you see that? Is
absolutely.
It a lot of it?
The grooming process for hands-on related things that's familial is more of a gradual process, because what most parents don't understand is before that perpetrator is going to groom that child, they're going to groom that parent. And they're going to get that parent comfortable with a number of things, just being around, and just, so that if something comes up from the child, an outcry of any kind comes up from the child, then that parent group or that, adult figure in their life is going to be like, oh, it's so-and-so, maybe you misunderstood, they dismiss it or whatever. Not that they don't believe or want to, be victim focused, because we always do, but that grooming process is such a prolonged thing, and there's such a fixture in their lives. People by nature want to believe people are good and not going to do those kind of things. And unfortunately, it happens quite a bit. The online grooming is much more rapid than it is in a real hands-on situation where they have access to a child.
So when you're doing this, the question is, you've been doing this for 19 years.
Yeah, 19 of my 31. I've been with my agency for 31 years, and like I said, I have 5 years.
And that's your agency's Garland, correct?
Yep,
Garland PD, which we love us some Garland PD.
Yes, we do.
I brag about you guys all the time. And
Great.
I have no personal connections to you guys. I just, you hear when you're connected to the law enforcement world, the guys that are the bad boys. And I'm like, Garland PD are the baddest of the baddest to me.
Well, I love the agency. I love the department. They've been great to me for so many years.
Yeah.
I'm fiercely loyal to them. And I'm just grateful that they gave me this opportunity, the outlet to do what I do and specialize the way I specialize for the length of time that I have, because it's pretty rare.
So 19 years, you've seen a lot of changes, because you went from, so give us a comparison, give the audience an idea of, because I would say 19, 20 years ago, you weren't hearing a lot of trafficking stuff. I mean, if you did, I think it would be more of the law enforcement world that was talking about it, not so much society talking about it.
Right.
So 19 years ago you started. What were some of the things that you've seen and fast forward to now that have changed so dramatically?
Well, one, the term trafficking was not a common term that was used back then. And that word, and I don't want this to come across wrong, but that word trafficking, human trafficking, it's very prevalent in our society, but it is, in my opinion, overused. It's overgeneralized to encompass a lot of things, and there's a lot of factors and reasons for that. It's absolutely an epidemic in the country, but I can assure you that the child who is being trafficked, and in the terms of what society thinks trafficked, forced into sex trafficking or labor trafficking, whatever it may be, that child was groomed long before. That child was probably put through situations long before they got to the point of that traffic situation. They were exploited in some form, probably either in person or online, or maybe a combination of both. And so back in the early days, there were, the way we work and the way I work cases now is we have what are called reactive cases, meaning you have like a mother or father, aunt, uncle, grandma, grandpa, or whatever that are diligent about checking on their kids' devices, those kind of things. And so, they periodically check, or maybe they use an app to kind of monitor some things. And that's really prevalent now. But back when I first started, it was rare. Like there were parents who rarely touched their kids' phones. And so we were not getting reactive cases on any level like I do now. So that was one humongous difference. Technology obviously was way different back then. My first undercover phone was a flip phone. texting on a flip phone, as you can remember, back then was
That's a lot
horrific.
of work.
Yeah,
a lot of work.
pushing one button 3 times to get to the letter and all these kind of things. So technology itself, third-party applications were not really in, the thing back then. So there's been all this evolution, and technology changes all the time, even in today's world. But I think the biggest change for the positive is awareness that parents have now, society in general has now. There's far more awareness today than there ever was 20 years ago.
And I agree with that, but I still feel we're not like doing enough because parents are still not monitoring a lot of the social media things that their kids are on, and we're even seeing it as young as 6 years old. I mean, they have full access to the internet and everything in it. Yep. And I don't think we think enough. We think about the different sites like Facebook, we think about Instagram, we think about, Snapchat and all those things that the kids are on. TikTok, that's where they're doing a lot of the, grooming on TikTok. And so what we do have to understand is it also comes through video games.
Oh, yeah.
Because we have all these online video games. And so they make friends and they think they're their age. And so it's really, really, as a parent now, how do you monitor all that?
Yeah, it's really difficult. You have to be very intentional. That's kind of what we preach. You have to lean in. Like, if you're not, unfortunately, I see when I go to restaurants from my family and I see, a young kid or even a middle school or elementary school kid, like these tablets, these phones, these are almost like babysitters for some parents. Yeah. And, I'm not taking shots or jabs at a parent that does that, but be smart, lean in, have those uncomfortable conversations. I ask when I talk to, parents and do like presentations for schools or administrators or whoever, like I'll talk the paint off a wall, as you're going to see today. But at the end of the day,
we love it.
At the end of the day, it's all about raising awareness.
Yeah.
It's all about educating people and just bringing it to the forefront of their mind, be able to say, okay, how can I do better? Like, I'm kind of slacking over here. And I'll always ask a big group of parents, I'm like, where do you think the number one place in your home that you should not allow your child to have a phone? What would you say?
Bathroom.
Absolutely.
That's what I'm thinking, bathroom, because you can shut it. Your parents aren't going to mess with you.
You can reasonably expect your parents aren't barging in the room in a bathroom, right? You have a reasonable expectation you're going to have some privacy there. And so I have a lot of parents will say, well, their bedroom, I don't want their phone in their room at night, and we have rules. Great. That's a great rule to have in place. But the bathroom's a bigger concern than anything, because they generally know no one's barging in, and that's a really vulnerable place. Like, as an investigator, I see photos all the time in bathroom mirrors, and the fingers, the duck lips, the tongues out, and all these weird kissy faces and all that stuff. All that stuff's happening typically in a bathroom. So, yeah, very good. Did well.
Thank you. We passed the test. I mean, that's the first thing I think of is privacy.
But you know what? I mean, as you're talking about all this, I'm a proponent of bringing back the flip phone for these kids because I think it's so much safer. I really don't know that they need all the access to internet.
These kids have this instant gratification. They have this instant, be able to touch, take a picture, whatever. With flip phones, like we said, you have to be person flip phones. You had to work for it. Like,
adults are just as bad, though. Like we can be having a conversation and just about whatever, and somebody's phone will go off, and we will completely disengage from our conversation with this person to grab our phone because we almost have this like Pavlovian instinct to go and immediately respond, and kids are no different. So they all want the likes, they all want the thumbs up, they all want the hearts, they all want the attention. They're all just craving it, and they know that technology, the other issue I think parents will default on is, I don't understand the technology. Like we were, the guy that I run a podcast with, we were doing a class out in Utah, and we were doing this parent presentation. There was a whole bunch of these parents in the audience, and we were up on this stage, and this is like 10 minutes before this session starts, and I see all these parents in the audience, and they're all on their phones. They're all checking in. I see selfies getting taken and, all these kind of things. And then we start to get questions about, well, we don't really understand the technology. I'm like, well, that's not true. I just watched you using the technology.
Yeah.
Like, you just have to be intentional. Lean in. The hard conversations are difficult. But listen, and I'll give credit to my buddy Brandon Poor, who I do the podcast with. He gives this kind of dumb analogy, but I've heard it so many times. I used to kind of poke fun at him for it. But the more I've heard it and the longer we've done this, we've taught, off and on for the last, I don't know, 8 or 10 years or whatever, is he gives us an analogy about brushing your teeth. So think about your own kids. When your child is starting to get a tooth, you're introducing a toothbrush, right? And you're kind of brushing the tooth for them, and then they get more teeth, and then you're letting them do it a little bit, and then we're constantly on our kids, right? Brush your teeth, we do this twice a day, we go through here, we go through here, we do this, we rinse, we do this. As they get a little bit older, right? Now they're, preteens. Have you brushed your teeth today? Like, remember, twice a day? Da, da, da. Now we got teenagers. We're like, hey, my son, bro, go brush your teeth. Right? Like, what's going on here? And so we reinforce this from this tiny little age, right? Why are we having such difficulty, and why are we so challenged when it comes to the difficult conversation?
Right.
Good touch, bad touch. Like, age appropriate, of course. Obviously, you want it to be age appropriate because you don't want to be sharing with a elementary school kid something that would be geared more towards a high school kid or vice versa. But body safety, good touch, bad touch, all these sort of things that we fear as parents. Like, I've spoken to parents who've said, well, when my kid turns 13, we're going to sit down and have this conversation.
Yeah, why is it 13?
Why that? And why is it one conversation?
Yeah.
Why aren't you having these constant conversations over and over and over and over and over, so that it's just what they expect? Like, there's no shock, there's no awe. We just really have to be sort of ugly honest about things without like oversharing, but so that we're aware of what's going on.
But it makes the kids comfortable talking about it. So then, they're used to that language. They're used to having those conversations with their parents, and they're not scared to. So that if someone does reach out, they can immediately go to their parents because they're used to it.
How many kids have you talked to, though? This is where I'm curious, because she's sitting here saying this. I'm saying this to you. You're saying this.
Thousands.
But my question to you is, let's say, you're right. There's appropriate ages to talk about certain things, and they get older. You talk about more descriptive type stuff. What is the age that you would recommend parents start talking to their children about this? And what would it be that you'd say to that child? Let's say, how young? What's the youngest you would say?
To be quite honest, it'd probably be around 9 or 10.
Okay.
Honestly.
Okay.
And it would be very, very, very limited. It might just be like a good touch, bad touch kind of thing, or hugs. Who's allowed to give hugs? Who can you come and tell if something happens? Just general body safety. Who can see this, who can see that, showers or baths are for this and for mom or dad or grandma, grandpa, whatever. So just something in a very early age where you're just implementing things that say, okay, this child at that age can kind of understand, oh yeah, like I don't, bath is for this person. It's not for, the general public, not running around. There is a component of things that happen online, and I don't want to jump ahead of any questions you have, but it made me think of it when you asked that, is there's the hub, I guess, in the nation for the U.S. is NCMEC, National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. And so every online provider that exists, the Facebooks, the Kicks, the Snapchats, the whatever you can think of, Discord, Twitch, all of these, they're all federally mandated to report activity they find on their servers. So something happens, maybe they see or someone reports, a profile of some creepy guy, and he's got a bunch of like young kids on his profile. So they report that to whatever the platform is. The platform then submits a thing called a cyber tip over to NCMEC. NCMEC then kind of triages what it is, and then they submit it across the country to whatever respective law enforcement agency needs to see it. So if, say for example, there's a real kid in my city who is doing some things online, and the offender or the suspect person is in New York, then those tips are distributed accordingly.
Okay.
And then we work together to sort of figure it out. And the reason I thought of that is because I see specifically on like YouTube or kids, YouTube for kids, I see a lot of kids who are grabbing up an iPad or a phone or whatever, and they're doing stuff innocently in their mind. They're dancing and goofing around,
right.
and if they get in a wrong setting with the wrong person, things can go very wrong, and then clothing can be removed, and things are going on. And sometimes kids are just being goofy because they don't know, and they're putting things out online, and their parents have no idea, and it results in this cyber tip. So you just want to begin this, and I'm talking little kids, 5, 6,
100%.
7,
I was saying younger is better.
Well,
yeah.
and it makes you wonder too, though. You say this, it's very innocent, but then you also have to say, with that, educate the parents, because the parents are encouraging it sometimes just to get more online attention for them, to get the followers, to get the likes, to get all this stuff.
It raises another question about the photos of your kids you put online.
Right.
If you're not diligent about your settings, and we were literally just having a conversation last week. We were recording some episodes for our podcast, and we were kind of talking about, because one of our listeners came to us and said, why don't you do an episode where you're physically showing what the app is? How do I go to this setting? How do I do this? For those parents who might have some technical difficulties and those kind of things, or technically challenged. And so that's something we're going to try to do, on a bigger scale, so that we can do that. We already have a ton of resources for that. We through our own website, we try to just throw out as much information as we possibly can. But it's a big issue, and parents need to be really intentional.
And one of the things, you're bringing up, we're putting kids out there, and that we know that exposure to the internet like that is really harmful for them, as in predators can chase them down. But at the same time, we're also teaching them how to be too grown up. They're seeing things that are way developmentally inappropriate. And so kids are sexualized earlier, and they're behaving in a way that's way older than their age, which makes them more vulnerable.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. One of the things I had a sometimers moment is in regards to those photos. Some parents, innocently they go on vacation to wherever, the Bahamas or Florida or wherever, the beach, and they put these photos up of their kids in bathing suits. And so they appear innocent. They don't appear sexualized at all. But think of the type of predatory type person who gets aroused by just that alone.
Exactly.
And so you really have to be really cognizant about what you're doing and what you're putting out there, and then back it up with who's able to access it.
And it's so unfortunate that we're living in a world where simply just taking a wonderful moment, a picture of your child just playing on the beach in a bathing suit, turns someone else into it turns into a disgusting situation. So question for you though, what was one thing that really has there been a story? I know there's so many of them, but has there been one that has stayed with you?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Do you mind talking about it?
No, I don't mind at all. I'll be vanilla and generic as I can, but I just want to impress upon your listeners and your watchers, your followers, whatever, the importance of things. And so I had a case involving a teenage girl, a really new teenage girl, who was at home babysitting a family friend, a small child, like a toddler age child, while the parents went out to the movies or whatever. And so what I'm going to tell you took place over the course of 6 hours, no longer, right? Everything that happened. And so she's online, she's on a platform, the child she's caring for is down for a nap or whatever. And she meets this person online who looks like a kid, purports to be a kid, her age or a little bit older. And they kind of talk. And so they exchange regular photos, and then very quickly this person online sends very inappropriate things to this female child. And the female child, he's then, of course, looking for the prize. He wants the same in return. And so he's telling, hey, do this. And initially she's like, absolutely not, no way, I'm not doing it. All the things we would hope that a child would say. But over a little bit more time, it happens, and she does send some inappropriate things. And then the case really escalates because she is coerced to do other things that involve videos. She's coerced to do things that involve this other child. Lots of just the most horrific things that you can entertain in your mind, right? And so it came to a point where it flipped from, oh, this is a common where we like each other, to now this is an extortion thing. You will do this, or I will send this to your mom. I will send this to your grandparents. I'll put this on social media. I'm going to put you on blast is what a terminology that a young person would understand. And so this girl is begging, please don't, please don't, do this, do more. And it gets very, very aggressive. And then at one point, this perpetrator wants this child to do something to self-harm. Carve his name on her body with a knife. And she drew, that's her line in the sand. And she said, absolutely not. No way. And there's all these threats. I'm going to expose you. And she's like, you do what you got to do. And she literally walks to a payphone across the street and calls the police and says, this is what just happened. This is what I just did. And so this is this happens over 6 hours, right? And so it's now about midnight. She has an older sibling in the home at the time who's asleep, as is the baby. So, you know, don't beat anybody up in the comments, you know, for that. Police show up. They have some knowledge of this girl. She's had a couple of issues in the past. She's run away a few times. She doesn't have the greatest support system at her home. And so they know her. They recognize her. And she shares the story with them. Far more detail, obviously. And so for what she said happened and what she said she did, they arrested her.
I was wondering.
And so at that moment, this is happening over the weekend, right? And so in most cases, at least in my agency, they would call me, be like, oh, dude, like we've just opened Pandora's box. We don't even know what to do. But I didn't get that call, which is fine. I'm not knocking them for that. And what they did wasn't wrong. It
right.
I mean, by law, it
right.
was right.
Right.
But I read it I got the report linked to me, and then so this is a Monday. I'm reading all this, and I'm like, whoa. The girl had enough sensibility to realize, I've kind of taken this further than I wanted to go, and so she eventually gets taken to a facility where she could get some help, right? So she's going to be in a facility for this period of time, about a week. And so I read this situation, I read the report, and they took her phone, obviously, and logged it in. And so now I've got this working on that. And I pumped the brakes on everything, right? So I get the charges all like suspended in animation right now, because I went to those officers and I was like, do you think that she would have done anything to that child if she wasn't prompted by the person
right.
online? And, you know, everybody agreed, well, no, she never would have done that. Well, exactly. So we're not turning a victim into a suspect. That's not what we're about. That's not the spirit of the law in my eyes. We're not out to make children sex offenders. It's kind of dumb. Anyway, I get into the device, I get into the conversations, and I start to unpack this, and it just enrages me. Like what I'm reading, the content, the manipulation, just all of it. It's just horrific on every level. And so I'm a little heated. I'm like, I'm getting this guy. I don't care. And so I start to dig in, and I'm going to take a longer story short. I tracked the guy to England. Now, in the United States, in most agencies all over the country, if an offender is found overseas, like I link something to a guy who's overseas, I don't have jurisdiction in England.
Right.
I don't have.
It's international.
Yeah. Now there are processes we can do that
right.
take some time, but there are things that we can do. And so at the end of the day, most agencies kind of punt it overseas. Like, oh, we're going to make a referral and hope for the best. But I was not having that. I'm like, I'm finding this guy, right? I was not.
Good
happy,
for you.
Right.
And so I dig in, and it took a little bit of luck, because if we didn't have luck, we'd have nothing, right? I guess get lucky, land to the right person, right time, and the planets sort of aligned for me. And so I start to communicate with some investigators over in England, and this all happens within one day. And within the next day, this guy's identified. Like I know where he lives. I got a picture of his house. I got a picture of him. He's not this 16-year-old kid he claims to be. He's a 34-year-old, real creepy dude, as I expect. And so within 2 days, the cops in England are kicking his door, arresting him, right? They recover all of the material that my victim sent on behalf of both my victims. I have 2 victims here, right? And so at that point, it opened up Pandora's box. We always have, when we make an arrest, and whether it's here, across the pond, wherever it is, we have these high five moments. It's really great when we can say, bap, we say, hey, great job, great catch. But for me, if you're doing this job right, my case just started, right? Because do I think that this guy is only communicating with my victim?
No.
Absolutely not.
Right.
He's communicating with others.
Yeah.
And so we start to do forensics, computer forensics. We're looking at everything. And I'm kind of coordinating with these guys in England, right? And so they call me and they tell me, they said, listen, this is a huge thing. Like this guy is so prolific. And I'm like, okay, like how prolific? And they said, we think we've uncovered 8 to 10,000 victims
Oh my goodness.
around the world. And I'm like, you said what? How many? And so it became this, it's the largest case I've ever worked. I'll be honest, it's still going on. I'm going to cut to the short for you. He's been caught, he's been convicted, he's in prison, but there are so many victims. And he's only in prison on my 2 victims here, right? And so there are so many victims in so many different places. It became a nightmare.
Right.
An entire task force of people in England were working this, and I was it in the city of Garland.
Wow.
I was it.
Wow.
And I was like swarmed. I'm not lying when I tell you, with one particular provider, I submitted over 5,200 pieces of legal process to one provider. And when I tell people, I've done this presentation at conferences and stuff, where I have a whole PowerPoint of different things. And when I put that up there, when there's cops in the room, they're like, huh? Like, how many?
Yeah.
Like, it was just a paperwork nightmare. But the total satisfaction of that case for me was great when they got him. Don't get me wrong. The bigger satisfaction to me was when I got to go to that little girl and tell her how brave she was. Listen, if you had not stepped forward, if you had not come forward to tell, we never would have known who that guy was. And as a result, we're on the path of potentially saving between 8 and 10,000 kids around the world.
Wow.
And she was, as I said, she had a terrible support system, but she just broke down and cried. But I said, listen, I was like, look how tough you are.
Yeah.
Look how brave you are. I'm
Bless
like,
her heart.
good for you. And so she's doing a whole lot better now. This was, that case started in 2020.
Oh, so this was recent then. It was pretty recent.
It started 2020. He was convicted in 21, and he's actually getting set up for another trial. They have victims in blocks of like 50 victims in blocks, because here in the United States, I would have gotten that guy locked up probably for life.
Right.
A minimum, he would have got 60 years, probably 70 years, but very likely could be life. Well, the system in England is different, right? And so when he was convicted for my victims, he got 19 years in prison. And to me, I was like blown away by that. I was like, 19 years. I'm like, we know all this other information. We have all this stuff. And I'm like, don't get me wrong, 19 years is still a pretty good hit. The guy was 36-ish when he was convicted. But it wasn't enough. And what I'm grateful for is that relationship that I now have with those guys in England. They're the best. They're the best. Like, we're good friends. And they had the same feel as I did. They're like, we're not happy with that. So they're going to charge him until he basically gets life. Which
That's
is
awesome.
Now, so
good for us.
I'm sitting here hearing you talk about this. One, congratulations. And,
Yes.
and here's another thing I want to say to you too, is kudos to you for and I mean, I know you don't need this, but I love hearing that the fact that you're actually encouraging the victim, this young lady that has had a hard life, because here's the deal, she's probably never been heard.
Right.
Ever. She's probably, with her life situation she's been dealing with, she's probably never been told, hey, you did a good thing. You did the right thing, even though it started out bad, you had enough in you to do the right thing. Do you ever follow up with these people years later and just make sure they're doing okay?
I do, actually. Not all of them, obviously, but, I just become like almost a part of their story, their life. And some have turned out great and some have not turned out so great, unfortunately. I have definitely kept in touch with a handful who, I just keep tabs on. I'm really proud of one. She's done so well. She's graduated college. She is now on a path to become a cop. She's super.
That's awesome.
Super vigilant about everything. She's got younger siblings who she was there to then set an example for. Don't get me wrong, she went through some rough stuff and had a rough patch, but she's really a shining example for that. I have another victim who I keep everybody anonymous, but she was gracious enough to even come on our podcast and be interviewed.
Wow.
About it. And
that takes a lot of courage.
I was like,
doesn't it?
man, you talk about courage. I was like, that girl's a beast. And I mean, just doing well, and she's like married now. I think she's got kids, and so yes, those connections are definitely made, and I think it's an important role,
of course.
And it's not just me. Don't get me wrong. There's an entire team of people. The Dallas Children's Advocacy Center, I love them dearly.
They do amazing work.
They have the MDT process, multidisciplinary team process. They have teams and teams of people. I mean, I just can't give enough love to them because I couldn't do what I do without them.
Mm-hmm.
Sadly, they can't do what they do, without all the law enforcement people that are doing great work all over the country, every day. These things are happening every day. So, yes, it's very good to get that kind of a guy locked up, but more important to get that girl back on the right path.
And what's interesting, too, is you say this, and you don't wish harm on anybody, but when you violate a child, you're taking every bit of innocence out of them.
Absolutely.
And the trust. And
it's the worst of the worst. It's the worst of the worst
thing of processing if they survive, right?
Yep.
The good thing about this, and I don't know why this is, but I've always said when these predators make it to prison, 9 times out of 10 they don't last very long because they've got a target on them.
Yeah.
So that guy that got the 19.
There's no love even in prison.
The guy that got the 19 years, you kind of hope that the system.
Yeah.
One
of the questions that I've been asked when I did the presentation for that case study is how could the guy have so many victims everywhere? And so two factors for that. One is being online, being someone who has a propensity for kids online, it's a borderless crime. There's no limit on where they can go, what they can do. They can. He's sitting in England exploiting kids in Texas and all over the U.S. I had hundreds of victims here in the U.S. that I had to help track down and things of that nature. But secondarily, he had a job where he worked on a cruise ship for 10 years.
Oh, my gosh.
And everywhere that ship would port.
So he was international then. He was everywhere.
Everywhere that ship would dock for a port, we had victims in that area. Some were hands-on. So, again, I'm very skewed in my mindset of what I think about. I think of my parents who are just live in this bubble of nothing goes on in their world. And, my in-laws, they know what is going on. And I obviously share with them certain things, and even my own family, but the innocence of that is lost on some.
It brings me to the question, because we talk about, right now these kids can be exposed on just things that people think are fairly innocent and normal sites that kids go on. And so parents they're on this, that's fine. What people don't understand is the dark web.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about the difference? Because there's a lot of people who do not know what that is.
Yeah, and it's such a misnomer. People believe that the majority of the horrible stuff happens on the dark web, and yes, don't get me wrong, there is terrible, terrible things that happen on the dark web, but the average person has no idea how to even get to the dark web, which is a good thing, because trust me when I tell you, you go dabbling into the devil's paradise, you're in it.
Yes.
And there'll be no mistake you're in it, because they're very graphic and open about what it is they're seeking and what it is they're doing. Literally, you can hire someone to kill another person on there. You could buy a body part. You could buy a child. You can buy drugs and guns and all kinds of things that would shock the conscience of most people. The majority of the exploitation that happens in the United States is right here on the clear web. It's right here on apps that are being used. I'll give you an example. There was an officer in my department who came to me and said, hey, my daughter is on, and she's little. She was 7. He's like, my daughter uses this goofy little kids app, and it's a little kids app. And it's where you go on and you can create a little animal, a dog or a cat or whatever. And it's very, very mild, and you basically walk your dog around this little fake city, and people put food out, and the dog will get petted by people walking by in the park. It's very, very super innocent, right? And he said, so my kid is playing this game. I've seen it. I've looked at it. It looks very harmless, but it has a chat feature. It has a chat function. And she brings it to her father to say, well, I got this. What is this? And it was a message from somebody. It was a message from some predatory type who knows that this app is being used by kids that are 6, 7, and 8 years old, and he's trying to sexualize things, acting like a kid, trying to sexualize comments and things. And so, you know, of course, he's like he's freaking out, right? And I had never even heard of the app. Never. Oh, and I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds of them. And listen, I'm the sexiest 12-year-old girl online. I am smoking hot on there, right? I was chatting on the way here to this interview.
Were you really?
Yes, I really was. I promise you, my buddy I do the podcast with, he's the sexiest one online. I'm the ugliest one online.
Oh my gosh, that is hilarious.
So what did you do? Did you investigate, obviously?
I did, and I actually had to download the app on my undercover phone. I had to then figure out what it was. I tried to get in and do another, connect with this person. There's a lot of things that can be done. And while I'm thinking about it, so I don't have another sometimers moment, let me touch on a couple things as a parent as what to do if you encounter something, because that's huge, right? Okay. So don't freak out, right? I know that's easy to say,
sure,
but don't freak out. I know that you want to blow a stack and, but your kid's going to shut down. Mm-hmm. They're deathly afraid you're going to take that phone away. Mm-hmm. They're going to lose it. They're never going to get it back. And so don't freak. If different things happen with different people who find this information, and I'll give you for instance, if a dad intercepts something, a message, a picture, something, whatever, on an app or regular message or whatever, dads tend to really blow their stack. Oh, yeah. And so then they usually will reach out to the person, call them or direct message them. Yeah. And there's all kinds of expletives and things that they're going to do to burn their home to the ground and amputate body parts, things like that. This is my 10-year-old, my 11-year-old, whatever. It's very angry and very violent, right? And it typically is followed up with a suspect who's like, I'm really sorry, I didn't know, but, delete, block, all these kind of things, right? Moms are angry, but moms are calculated. Guys, we all know.
We are calculating, very calculating.
Ladies are way smarter than us, right? We are simple creatures.
We're not very complex.
Yeah. We are not complex. They are complex. And so moms are thinking, oh, I'm going to do some things I'm going to help the cops. So give me the phone, little daughter. And then mom starts to play as little daughter. Okay. I'm just going to help the cops. Let me tell you, that's a terrible idea. Never do that. Never interact with an offender. Because what you automatically do is give that offender, if we're able to contact him and arrest him and file a case, it gives that person an automatic defense. It automatically says, oh, I knew it was the mom the whole time, blah, blah, blah. It's a fantasy. It was this, it was that. They can throw whatever they want and whatever sticks. Believe it or not, juries will sometimes side with that, right? So never, ever communicate ever with the suspect. Call your local police department. If you live in a town where you don't think they have an ICAC, don't worry. We're a national organization, right? There's ICACs in every state. We have them crawling all over Texas. If the little town you live in is so small that they don't have an affiliation with ICAC, I guarantee they know somebody who does.
Call Garland.
Call Garland. Call me. That's 100%. Fine. Totally fine, right? And we will guide you to where you need to go. Here's the other takeaway. Sometimes when images are involved, sometimes, unfortunately, children share images they shouldn't share or videos they shouldn't share, inappropriate images. I have literally had parents say, I don't want that stuff on my kid's phone, so they forward it to their own phone so they can wipe it from their kid's phone. That's a no-go. That's a crime. You just literally distributed statutorily what we call child pornography. Unfortunately, it's the term we like to use is CSAM, child sex abuse material. That's kind of globally what it's referred to as. You've just transferred CSAM from one device to another. That is a crime in Texas. You now possess something that could potentially get you charged. And then you lose your phone plus your kid's phone because we have to do forensics.
And they had good intentions for it.
And the intentions are solid.
I love how you're telling us this because a lot of people don't do
this.
This
is amazing.
Don't do that. Call your local agency, make a police report, take your kid's device, and this is another check the box kind of thing. Put the device in airplane mode.
Airplane mode, okay.
Right? Put the device in airplane mode. If you don't know the password as the parent, you don't know the password to your kid's phone, do not let it lock, right?
Okay.
Put it in airplane mode. Hopefully you know the password. I'd tell you most parents don't know their kids' passwords.
You should know the password.
Yeah, that's rule number one.
Yes.
However, airplane mode is important. Think of this. If you have, I don't know what kind of phone you have. Say you have the new, latest and greatest iPhone.
Okay.
Your old iPhone, what do you typically do with your old phones? In my house, they go into a drawer.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, guess what? All those phones will still work.
Right.
If they power and they connect to Wi-Fi, they work. You don't need a SIM card. You don't need to get calls or whatever. Kids are crafty. Kids will go to that drawer knowing, oh, well, there's 3 iPhones in there. They charge it up. They get on. They connect to Wi-Fi. They go to school, connect to Wi-Fi. They log into their accounts, and they delete, right? Because they know I'm in a bit of trouble, right? So make sure if you're going to secure one of their phones, you secure all of your extra stuff, right? Your little extra drawer of components or whatever you have, or tablets or things like that. Make sure you lock those up. And then get to the cops when you can. Give consent. Whoever pays for the device, if mom and dad pay for the device, it's your phone. You just let your kid use it, right? So,
which I wish parents understood.
I tell parents that all the time.
I tell
parents that all the time.
If you want to keep that, then you're going to obey the rules.
Oh, yeah.
And you're going to go by that, or
it's a luxury.
Not yours.
You know, it's a right. It's
but
not
we've
privilege,
taken that away. That's right.
Yeah.
We've taken that away because we don't know how to enforce being a parent, right? So we don't want to hurt their feelings. It's easier not to deal with it. Well, and I think you see that a lot with what you're dealing with.
100%.
Now, I know this information's been so amazing. I have to say, though, what pulled me into pulling you onto the show was Brandon Hernandez, which is one of your colleagues at Garland PD, was telling me, he's like, you've got to interview this guy. And he's like, you got to ask him about the elbow vag. And I'm like, the elbow vag? Like, what are we talking about here? Tell me about some of the ways you lure in some of these criminals.
Okay. I'll have to thank Brandon for that Monday.
You're welcome, Brandon.
Thank you for that, buddy. So I was online as a young girl. I play a young girl, young boy, whatever is needed. Sometimes I play a parent that's offering up a child or a grandparent or whatever.
I can't even imagine.
Yeah, it runs
all
all
happens. I worked foster care. It happens.
Yeah. Oh, it happens all the time. You know, people don't think that happens, but I promise you it happens. So in this one particular one, it's kind of funny because I have multiple things going on at once, right? I'm a free-spirited 12-year-old girl or 13-year-old girl or whatever, so I'm on all kinds of platforms, and I got 15 or 20 different profiles. You know, I run the gamut. And so I'm always talking, and I'm always different places. Well, this particular week, and this was years ago, I had gotten a guy who showed up like on a Tuesday. Got him, arrested him. Well, one of my other guys I had been talking to, he had a unique skill set on how he typed, and or how I think he spoke, because how he typed is how I think he spoke, because he typed with an accent. And you think, well, how do you type with an accent?
That is very interesting.
Well, this is how he would do it. So he would call me baby, but he would write BB, and he would say, ooh, BB. So it'd be like OHHHBB, ooh, BB. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, I want to see your expletive for private part drawn out, lots of letters, P, 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 U, U, U.
Wow.
And so that was his common theme. That was like the theme of his thing every day. Ooh, BB, show me your blank. Ooh, BB, I want to see your blank. And so we were talking this whole time. Obviously, I'm not giving him anything like that. I'm not allowed to do that. I wouldn't do that. And so he was set to show up on like a Thursday. So it's like Wednesday evening or whatever day of the week it was. I just got the guy the day before, and I'm at home. I got home late, about 10, and I'm sitting at my table eating a bowl of cereal. And my oldest daughter, who was in college at the time, comes home from either class or work or wherever, and it's very common in my house where my kids will walk in. So my daughter says, "Oh, you talking to one of your boys?" And I'm like,
I love it.
I'm like, yes, I am. And so I got the phone and I'm talking, and she's like, "Oh, what does this guy want?" And so I show her, "Ooh, BB, I want to see your," and she's like, "Gross," right? Yeah. She's like, "That's disgusting." And I'm like, "Yes, I'm aware." I said, "Hopefully I won't have to deal with this after tomorrow."
Yeah.
You know, blah, blah, blah. And as I'm eating cereal, I don't have a jacket on, obviously, but I'm in a shirt just like this, short sleeve. I'm eating cereal, and I look at my arm. And my arm is bent, right, because I have a spoon in it. And I'm like, I look right here in my arm. And I'm like, huh. I was like, I wonder what that looks like. I pull my phone, and I kind of I'm
Oh my
navigating
gosh.
over here, and I take a picture, and I look at my daughter, and she's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, I'm just trying something, right? So I get the picture, and I kind of do a little editing, and I'm like, maybe. Right? I don't know. And I show her.
I did not know where this was going, but I just figured it out.
I show her my arm vagina, right? And
My arm vagina.
and I show her, and I'm like, "What do you think?" She's like,
Pretty good.
"It's not terrible. Like, might work." She's a nurse at Johns Hopkins. I can say all these things. She knows all these things. So
shout out to the daughter.
Yeah, shout out. So she's like, maybe. So he asks again, "Ooh, BB." It's like, I'm ready to go to bed. Send, right? I send it. His reply says, "Ooh, BB, I am a shave, you are, long word.
Wow.
I'm a shave your." Sorry, I know that's probably way too graphic for your stuff. But
No.
This
is what our listeners need to know.
That's it. That's just
They
it.
need to hear the truth.
They do.
so then my daughter says, "Can you do that?"
Go shave, Dad. Go
And
shave.
I was like, "I don't know." I said,
I just did.
I just did. So
Yeah.
we're going to see. So fast forward, I go to work the next day. You know, everybody's all geared, ready to get this guy. My boss says, "Hey, did you talk to your guy?" "Yeah, I did." And I said, "Hey," he goes, "He's still asking?" I said, "Yeah, he's still asking." I said, "But hey, look what I did." So I show him the picture. And he goes, like stunned, right? Big eyes. "Whose is that?" I said, "It's mine." I said, "It's my arm vagina." Now, for clarity, after I did take that picture, I had my daughter take a picture of my whole body with my arm.
Yeah.
You know, qualifying
To
photo.
make sure it was.
Right. And so he looks at it. He's like, "Can you do that?" And I said,
I just did.
"I don't know."
Yeah.
I was like, I'm more of the ask for forgiveness and permission kind. And I guess I need to preface by saying this is not an accepted practice in today's world.
Right.
We're not allowed to do that. Rules are in place when people screw things up. That's probably what it was. That rule exists probably because of me 20 years ago. So we get him. He shows up. He shows up with one Bic razor and a travel size thing of shaving cream for the process, among other things. And he does speak with an accent just like he types, right?
Wow.
Which is what I expected. And no shock, he's convicted. He goes to federal prison for, I think, 12 or 13 years. But that story, I've told that story so many times, that whole, ooh, BB, because it's just how it went, But the prosecutor, so at this particular time, I was on a task force with a federal agency. And so I had a relationship with the U.S. Attorney's office, and I just call the assistant U.S. attorney and say, "Hey," I tell her on the phone, I was like, "Hey, I got a couple travelers." That's what we call them, travelers. "I got a couple travelers this week. Do you want to come talk about them?" And she's like, "Sure, I'll be there Friday, whatever, 1 o'clock. And so she comes to the office, and in my mind, I was not going to give her that case, the arm one. I was just going to let the state prosecute that one because I wasn't sure. Like, I was like, I don't know if I did or not. What I did was legal. It was legal. Anyway, I was concerned she would have issue with it. So I tell her about the first one. She's like, "Oh, great. I'll take it, blah, blah, blah." She's like, "What about the other one?" And I'm like, "Oh, the other one?" I was like, "No, I was just going to let that go." "Why?" And I'm like, "Well, here." And I show her. She's like, "Wow, whose is that?" I'm like, "It's mine." I was like, "Look, it's right here."
This is hysterical.
And she's like, "That is genius."
It is genius.
She's like, "I'll
It
take
is.
it." And so she took it, and he was prosecuted. I told you he got 12 or 13 years or whatever. But again,
I wonder what the prison though thought of. I mean, like, how did he tell that story? Like, I got taken down by this guy's arm,
His elbow. His hairy elbow. I even brought a razor and shaving cream, but
I mean, that's just the
elbow.
funniest story. I mean, can he admit this?
Because he wanted to
very
admit it is
creative.
the other thing. But, you got to think outside the box. That's the way I took it and I interpreted it then. And, it worked out. I am very blessed. I get to go travel all over the country to teach cops how to do this job.
Wow.
That's kind of where I'm at in my career. Like, I've seen so much horribleness that I can never unsee it.
right.
So my focus now is like, get the young guys trained up and get them trained up right. I'm a real stickler for the rules. I really stick to wanting people to do it right.
It's got to be somewhat rewarding being able to pass on your knowledge to other agencies, to other fields that don't know the expertise, that haven't built up everything that you've built up. Does that seem like it's helped you process things a little bit better when you're able to share?
It does.
And help them to grow in their knowledge?
Yeah, it really does. Like I said, I don't I don't have bad dreams about this stuff. I've been very plugged in with things as far as my own mental health and awareness. And I will say our department is like tip of the spear when it comes to this.
I agree.
Amazing.
We agree.
We got to be recently at y'all's mental health day.
Yeah.
I wish more departments would really formulate after what you guys have done, because it's so amazing what you guys do on mental health.
We have Todd Jerry, who's part of our agency, and he's our mental health guy, and there's a whole behavioral analysis unit, or BRU, whatever that stands for. But I mean, it's so different today than what it was, 30 years ago when I started. Like, that was still the era of, rub some dirt on it, suck it up, and get back out there and all that. So kudos to our chief, Jeff Bryan, for, being willing to be the tip of the spear and set the example and really, really work to help people, because, like, unfortunately, law enforcement is an ugly job, and we see a lot of ugly stuff. And but it is very cathartic on some level to be able to go teach and train and take this, 30 plus years, 35 years of institutional knowledge to kind of shape somebody. Like, I cannot leave and see the program die. I can't.
No.
And I won't.
Yeah.
I just won't. My agency would love to hear that, because they've been begging me, please don't retire.
Yeah, we can't have you retire, Tony.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So, it's that important to me. It's just become part of my DNA. And I'm always going to be in this field. I will always do something in child protection for the rest of my life, whether I'm just volunteering or, doing the teaching thing or whatever. But that's what I really enjoy now is passing that along so that they can do it right. And just continue to make great cases.
If we look at some takeaways from today, and you've already given quite a few for parents, this is where I want parents to really understand the importance of being so vigilant with these devices. They are so dangerous. And I know that we give them to our kids so that they can fit in, so that they can be safe. And one of the reasons is I want to be able to know where my child is and be safe. Yeah. But we're putting devices in their hands that are causing them to be unsafe. And so really helping parents understand, I've got to take control over this. I got to know what's going on. I feel like there's so much education that we need to do on that. Yeah. Some of the other takeaways is you were talking about what parents should do, and you said immediately contact someone in the police department. Right. Is there any other agencies that you would promote for parents to reach out to or get more information about?
Almost every agency here in the Metroplex has someone that is in this ICAC arena. The task force I'm on now, the Northern Texas ICAC Task Force, ICAC is across the U.S., obviously, but here in Texas, we have three major hubs. The North Texas area, which covers basically Waco up to Oklahoma, and then east and west, all the way out to the borders. And then the Attorney General's office covers Austin and everything that goes out southwest. And then Houston covers all the rest. So there's three giant hubs of ICAC, the mothership, what we call the mothership, right? Yeah. And so within that mothership, I want to think there are 240, 250 affiliate agencies. So like my agency, Garland, is what's called an affiliate agency. And that's basically just a one-page MOU where you agree to work cyber tips and, work these types of cases and then help other agencies who don't have that capability. So here in the Metroplex, there's hundreds of departments that have someone that does this. May not be full-time. It may just be as needed. Yeah. But the resources here are plentiful. So it's far-reaching, somebody somewhere. And if you're even confused about it, there's a website. You just go to the ICAC Task Force website and drill right down to Texas, and you'll see a phone number and email address for somebody. And if you have an issue or something you want to report, or you can go to NECMEC. You can make a tip on NECMEC and make a cyber tip. There's a ton of things that people can do. You can also report things through the apps themselves. Like if you intercept something on, say, Snapchat, which I'm just going to tell you, there's no good value for that platform.
No.
There's no good use for it.
Something comes and it can disappear, and it's not, I mean, it's
just
not good.
Right. The sad thing is a lot of schools are allowing their kids' organizations, the student organizations, to communicate through that. So if you don't have Snapchat, you don't hear about when I'm supposed to be at practice. Or
that's a conversation that parents need to have with administrators of schools and say, that is inappropriate. This thing was created for disappearing messages and pictures. Like, nothing good can come of that.
Right.
Nothing.
Yes.
Like, if you want them to have a group, okay, figure it out. There's other things that you can do to make that communication workable. You know, unfortunately, it's the education side of it. You got to make people aware, because let's face it, there's not a lot of school administrators who really understand even what Snapchat is, let alone set
There's
some
so
hard
many
rules.
of them.
They just have no idea.
Not just that one, but
I know you threw out a few that I've never heard of, and it's like, you know, if you don't use it, you lose it. So we're definitely, you know, and I think it's important for parents to know, get information on all these different, you know, platforms that are out there.
Well, I can tell you, if you, I told you, I mentioned a couple times, like, I've had a podcast for the last 4 years, myself and Brandon from Grand Prairie PD. He was a guy that I trained initially to do the job. And he took off like a rocket ship and has made tons and tons of cases. He's a forensic genius. And so at the end of the day, we decided to put this podcast together. Ours is called Catfish Cops.
Catfish Cops,
Catfish
guys,
Cops.
listen to it.
Like I said, we've been around a very long time. It's not for the faint of heart, always. Sometimes if we tell you in the beginning, like, hey, this is explicit, no, it's explicit, so it's not going to be kid-friendly. We're always very diligent about saying, you know, if it is or isn't. But we have tons and tons of other things. We interview professionals from all walks of life in this arena, and we just want to highlight good work. We want to highlight everybody that's in the profession, all the different disciplines that are in here to just make things better for kids and for parents. And so we have a really robust resource guide that's no pat on our back, because what we are doing is really highlighting the good work that other people have put together and allowed us to use. So if you hit our website, it's Catfish Cops 5.0, or I'm sorry, catfishcops.com. I was about to give you the email address. The website is catfishcops.com. And if you go to our resource tabs, there's a ton of stuff. There's an entire section of stuff about settings on phones. There's an entire section devoted to applications. So if you're a parent and you're watching this and you're like, what is Kik, or what is Snapchat? What is this? What is that? Go to our site. It's free. Click on it. It gives you a one-page fact sheet, and then you print off the settings sheet for the same app, and it'll tell you, you can do this to make it safer for your kid. You can do this
I love that.
You can do this. You can do this. And so it's all available. And I have got to give the shout out. We did not create this. We piggyback off of the Karla Ryan Foundation. Sonia Ryan, who is, I love her to death. Sonia, I love you.
We love you too, Sonia. We don't know you, but maybe one day we
do.
will.
Her story is one you'll never forget.
Wow.
She's from Australia. Her daughter was the first teenager that was online and groomed online by someone when the law didn't even exist about that, and was murdered. And
terrible.
Her daughter's name was Carly, and so Sonia found the energy and strength to put together the Karla Ryan Foundation, which is who developed all these things that we use, and that she's graciously given us the right to do. So you can listen to her episodes. We have a good 3 or 4 episodes with her, but
love it.
She's here local to do nothing but help law enforcement, bridge that gap. She's obviously, I would love to turn her on to you guys to speak
we'd love to have her.
she is awesome. And so anyway, all those resources are there. It's great. Anybody wants them. We're trying to do some kind of creative things. I've been working really hard on a coloring book for a while. So we always had the concept of something called Catfish Kids to go along with our Catfish Cops theme. And if you see our logo, you'll understand the Catfish Cops thing. It's kind of a catfish with a hook, because that's our
hook 'em.
Catfish Cops.
Yeah.
We are Catfish Cops. That's what we do. And so he's got a pair of handcuffs and a little badge on and all that kind of stuff. So we always had this dream of like Catfish Kids and like sending a message, not only like a little nice coloring book that's free and easy to download, but it has a good message on there about, some kind of safety or prevention or whatever. So that's in the works. I've really been working hard. My goal is to get that done for 2025, and it should be up on the website as well.
Okay, so I'll make sure, too, when we get ready to go live with this episode, it'll probably be next week, actually, to put all that information in there so people can just click on the link, click on your podcast, click on
definitely
iCarly.
do
We can
that.
click on all of that to where it allows the listeners to be able to get these resources at a click.
That's awesome. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for coming on the show.
And I
What
want to
an
highlight
amazing-
that one bit of information you gave just one more time. If your child is a perpetrator reaches out to your child, do not interact.
Yes.
Never interact.
Please put it in airplane mode and take that phone to the police.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. We just wanted to really highlight because I think that's such an informative piece of advice. And so we really want to make
100%.
sure that we're protecting parents as well. We so much appreciate you. I have to ask you, you got to give me one in and one out for 2025.
In like what I want to do?
Yeah, like what's in for this year that was out last year?
Oh, you know,
What are we talking about?
I was
What
thinking,
we
I
just
was like,
talked
oh.
about? Or?
Like in your field, what would be?
The terminology is getting really weird. It's even getting hard for me to keep up with. And I play a kid online, right? The terminology is stuff that kids today have this, I don't know where they get this imagination to create words that don't mean
They
what
don't
you
make
think.
sense.
lingo.
It
Yeah.
doesn't.
The
So-
lingo is so different. And so what might have been considered sus last year isn't sus anymore. It's
got
gonna
a
be
new word.
It's got a new
We can get rid of
terminology.
sus. I think
know what I mean?
I'm good with that.
So I'd say the biggest evolution over years is language and that kind of stuff.
Let's bring back proper language. Let's do
What
it.
is
2025.
proper language,
English.
though? Like we don't even we're not even speaking proper language anymore. We don't know it. But
I
we're
know.
Not, right?
I'm just saying. So
So-
we'll bring that back. So
Thank you so
appreciate it.
much for being on the show.
Oh, thanks for having me, you guys. This is great. Like I'm super jealous. We have nothing like this. We're lucky if we meet in a closet sometimes when we do ours. So
Hey, it's just about getting the message out, right?
yeah, 100%. And it does have a reach. I'll tell you, it has a reach. I was shocked when we saw the analytics behind who was listening and from where.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
I got an email
It's
from somebody in
amazing.
Cambodia one time, and
Oh,
one
yeah.
from Russia.
Yeah.
I'm like, what?
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
awesome.
It's crazy.
We love that.
Right?
It
It's
is.
crazy, but fantastic. I've heard nothing but great things about you guys, and
Thank you.
you come highly recommended. So
Thank you so much.
Thank you
We
so
appreciate it.
much. And thank you for being on our show. If you or anyone you know is struggling with mental health issues, please reach out to talk to someone you trust. Get connected to a mental health professional who can help you find ways to cope and ultimately feel better. If you are having suicidal or self-harm thoughts or thoughts of hurting another person, please go to the nearest ER, call 911, or contact the National Suicide Hotline at 988. Thank you for tuning in to Mental Perk. We hope our talk today highlighted real people working through real issues based on mental health. Our goal at Mental Perk is to make sure every one of you knows you're worthy. We're in this together.